What's up, everybody, and welcome to our C++ tutorial hosted by Morex, the coder. And in this tutorial, we're gonna move on to a topic of file handling, and we're gonna discuss about how one can actually create a program that either writes to a file or it reads from a file, right? So you're dealing with a file, and in some cases you just want to create maybe a file that is going to store a certain information, and that information might be needed later on, right? So that's what we're going to be discussing in this tutorial. And yeah, without any further ado, let's begin. So first things first, right? What is a file? So basically we have to define what a file is. I know some of the people might be knowing what a file is, but for the purpose of others who might not know or who are new to coding, okay, sometimes these terms might be or feel new even though they're not new, mostly because when you haven't been working with something but just using it, and when you get to finally get hands-on to something, that's where you get to realize, I've used this and this. For some it's going to ring a bell, for some it's going to be something that is completely new, right? So a file can be defined as a container for storing data, right? It's a container for data, right? And there are different kinds of files, right? We have a document, you may have a Word document, a PDF document, you may have a picture, you may have a video, etc., right? Those are files, right? And now we want to know as to how do we know what contents a file contain, right? What contents a file contains. So basically you want to know what type of a file, right? So you see I made a bit of an example there. Okay, with document, picture, and videos, right? But how do we know that this is a video? How do we know that this is a picture, right? So we use a file name for that. Basically from a file name, you will have a specific part to look for, which will tell you as to whether which or what type of a file this is, right? So in this case, say we have a file name, which is that, right? That's the file name dot extension, right? That's just the format for naming files, basically or generally. So in order for you to know which file is which, you look at the dot extension part. The extension is gonna tell you that this is this file. If it's a video, it's gonna be having a certain extension, and that's what we're gonna be discussing, right? So a file that contains a text ends with a .txt extension, right? That's a file. So that's one. And then a file that contains a picture, it ends with a .jpg extension or png, or it may have a different extension, right? It depends. Last but not least, which I see I don't have on my slides, is a video. It may have an mp4 or mkv, AVI. So there's various extensions, just like with pictures, right? I just chose most popular ones, which is JPEG, JPJ, and PNG, right? We'll talk much about those later on. So in this tutorial, we're going to be dealing with just a text file. We don't want to make it complicated, because we're going to introduce what you need to actually access or to actually write to a file, creating a file, then reading contents of that file. I think we'll follow that approach of first creating a file, then reading from that file, instead of us reading from a file that is already created, right? It's better to first create, then we get to access what we created, right? Cool. So creating a file, right? So you're gonna need a class by the name of offstream, right? This is for when you are creating a file, right? You're gonna need a class named offstream, and this file is found, or this class is found from a library called fstream. And okay, we're gonna talk about that later on, let me not confuse you. So inside that library, you can access an offstream class which allows you to create and write data into a file, right? And this is how you get to create the object for the file. For now, let's just keep it as object, but we'll get to a full understanding of the whole object when we discuss the pointers, right? But for now, let's just discuss let's just see it as an object, right? But it's an object basically. Cool. So you use your class name, right? And then you're gonna specify the name of the object, right, for this file. And then inside there you're gonna have a file name. That file name is a string, right? If it's a string, in double quotes, and then you have a semicolon. That's your file name. And to write to that file, you just going to use the file object name, and you're going to use the insertion operator and whatever content that you want to add to the file. But bear in mind, in terms of the file that you have, if it's a text file, you are only storing data there, right? You're only storing strings, I meant. You're storing strings, so whatever content that you have there has to be a string, right? And that's how you write to a file. Let's quickly look at how you read from a file. So reading from a file, right? What you want is, you want to use an if stream class, right? Again, it's from the fstream library. And then you want to create an object first, because you want the object of that file so that you can start dealing with that file directly, right? Or using that object for either writing or reading. In this case, we're going to be reading from the file, so we're going to use an ifstream class, and then I will specify the name of the object, and then it's going to be the file name. Same thing, file name supposed to be a string. Whatever that is inside the parenthesis of the file object function is a string. Then writing to a file, right? This is the syntax. So you're gonna have so first things first, right? You're gonna define the type of information that you want from that file. Then you're gonna use a getLine, right, which takes two parameters. It takes file object and a line, right? So basically that line is so basically the first line, since it's a string, is going to be stored on that variable that you have. So you're going to be overriding the contents written, or the contents that are stored inside the string or the variable line, which is of a string data type, right? And last but not least, you want to close that file. So after opening a file, it's a good practice to close the file. So you call the file object and you close the file, right? That's basically it. And let's head over to the coding side and we start coding. Let's have two tabs, one for coding, one for compiling, right? Oh, forgot I'm in different PC now. Okay, cool. mkdir files. Oh, there we go. mkdir files. There we go. And we just want to make sure we are in the right directory. There we go. Cool. So inside this we have no files at the moment. That's why when we type ls we don't see any file inside there, right? So let's create our files.cpp. Cool. So we're gonna set up our coding environment, right? And then this time around, we're dealing with files. So we need a library for that, which is gonna be the F stream, right? So we're gonna start with our include. This is IO stream. There we go, for input and output object. And then we have include, and then we're gonna have an F stream library, and then it's using name standard, right? And then it's int main. There we go. So that's us setting up our coding environment. And the first things first, right? Create the file object. And then after that, so create a file object. So basically we're going to create a file. By creating a file object, we're going to create a file, i.e. the file gets created. There we go. And then we're going to write to that file, to the newly created file. Cool. So to do that, as we discussed, we're going to use an off stream class. So it's off stream, and then our file name, I'm just going to call this Morex the coda, and then the file name, I'm going to name it the same thing, Morex the coda.txt. It's a text file, right? Cool. So upon doing this, we have created a file and we have the object for that file, right? Now what we want to do is that we want to write to that file, but then we have to discuss something else. Do we just want to write one line, or we want to write many lines? Okay, let's just go with an example that I just want to store the names of people inside a file, right? And then I know exactly how many people I want to store inside the file. So I'm going to use a for loop, int count, okay, line equals to 0, and then line should be less it's less than 5, so we just 5 people, and then go to the next line, right? And then I am gonna have my object Morex the coda, and then I have this, and then I'm gonna put in what the name. Then I'm gonna move to the next line, right? Because I want to put a name, then go to the next line, which means that I will need something there, name string. So I'm gonna have a string variable called name. Then I'm not gonna initialize it because I'm gonna get it from the input, and there we go. Use my scene object to get my input, and I store that in my variable, and then I continue and continue and continue. And let's execute this and see. So far what we have is just this file, and then we just want to execute this now using our G++ compiler. There we go. I just want to name my output Morex. Cool. There we go, and we execute the file, right? So I'm gonna have Morex the coda. I have Java, I have Python, I have off stream, I have if stream, right? And then if I type ls, now you will see that my file is created. Previously we only had that file, and then we executed our program, right? And we filled in this and we created a file, right? If I was to use my Vim to open that file, there we go, you will see that this is what I created. And what was happening there is that I've put in the name and then I go to the next line. So basically when I put in the next name, it gets stored in the next line, it goes to the next line, it goes to the next line, it goes to the next line, meaning that if I was to read this file, when I read this line, it's a string Morex decoder, and there's gonna be something at the end which is an escape sequence, which means next line basically, right? But yeah, as far as reading the file, that's how you go about it. Now let's quickly go and oh, we didn't close the file, by the way. We were supposed to close the file, so to close the file is just Morex the coder to close. That's basically it. But let's clear this, but I'm going to leave the string as it is because we're name, right? So now we want to create so we want to read from a file, right? So we want to read from a file. So this is just a file object that we're creating, and then according to our slides, as we discussed, we're going to use an if stream class, and then still going to use Morex the coder object, and then we specify the name of our file, right? If I go there, I'm just gonna copy this as it is. So that's my file name, and I am gonna go to my code, paste it there. Cool. So we have the object. What's left is for us to read the file. So the simplest way, as I've showed you, right, is getting a line. So basically our get line returns true or false, right? So what it does, or what happens, is that the method returns either true if there's still more lines, false if there are no more lines, right? So basically the easiest way to read our file is to use a while loop, and as a condition we're going to use the get line, and then we're going to store whatever line we get on a name string, and then we print it out, right? Then once it reads the file and gets all the lines, right, it stops. Because the main problem or the challenge with reading a file is knowing when does it end, right? You want to know where it ends. So if you are to use a for loop, you will have to first get how many lines are there, and then you can use whatever method you want to use for reading the file. So in this tutorial, I'm just going to focus on using getLine, and as we move further, you will see how we get to using other methods. And the other thing I'm going to talk about is in the next tutorial is pointers, because they form part of this. Because as you see, right, we are dealing with a file that is in memory, right? So basically this file is stored in memory somewhere, and then we want to point to that file. So basically what we're doing, creating a pointer that points to the memory address of the file. But we're going to talk about pointers not now in the next tutorial, just that it was easier to follow through with it. So that's why I just decided that we're just going to use this as a file object, and we'll use this object to read or write a file, right? So let's use while, and then we're going to have get line, that's the function, and then we're going to use our object Morex the coder, and then we're going to use our string name, which is a name, and then inside there we're going to have our cout object, and then its name. Then yeah, let's leave it as this. Cool. If you want to do things properly, we can close the file Morex the coda dot close, right? I updated my file, right? And I'm gonna stop that, clear this. So now we're starting off with this. We can remove this because we're not gonna use that, but it was gonna update and overwrite that. But yeah, let's just leave that. So basically when reading, you start with the file that you want to read, and you have your script, right? And also this, right, this is in the same directory as the files, right? So I don't have to specify the path because it's in the same directory where the file or your program is, but you can actually have this file in a different directory and read it from there. But that's not for this tutorial. There we go. Minus u. All right, let's just create our button for executing the file as well, and then you will see that we have that, right? It's the coda, and then we have Java. All that, this is because we didn't go to the next line, we just stored everything, and that was that. So to get a proper output, we end line, right, for displaying, and we clear that, and there we go. We get a nice output from there. And that's it for this tutorial. I hope this was not that complicated, and I hope it was not overwhelming. You just have to so basically for now what you're gonna do, get to know the fstream library, the classes associated with it. We have ifstream and offstream. That's what we are focused on in this tutorial. As we move forward, I don't know if you're gonna, but next week I want to focus on pointers. But we'll see, because we're gonna actually explore most of these concepts when we do either projects or solving problems, problem solving sessions, right? But there's another class which is called fstream, which does both. It does the reading of a file and creating of a file, right? So you can write and read to a file or from a file, right? So yeah, but we'll talk about that in the next tutorial. And I do hope you did enjoy the video, and I do hope that the previous video was also enjoyable, and I shall see you guys next week.